Yeah, let's get on with it. Oh, look, another Star Wars film. Just like last year, and there'll be another one next year. Alright, folks, let's fuck and chuck this film and move on with our lives. Star Wars, The Next to Last Jedi, is the sequel to Star Wars The Force Awakens and the second movie in the new trilogy, and already Disney have planned the next trilogy because cocaine isn't cheap. Isn't that right, Daisy? When The Force Awakens debuted, the hype was palpable. A few years after George Lucas botched his own film franchise with Jar Jar Binks and Anakin Skywalker, he relinquished it to Kathleen Kennedy and her Disney Corporation cronies. Fans were giddy as the sugar rush of a new trilogy free from George was a reality. But for some fans, the new Star Wars hype wore off very quickly. The sugar rush turned into uncomfortable bloat as many realized they had just been given a very corporate homage to the first Star Wars film with bad acting and awkward fan service. Now, 2 years later, we have the sequel with slightly less hype, weird merchandise, and heavy corporate marketing. Maybe this new movie would be better. Maybe the story would be better written. Maybe the actors would have improved their craft. Maybe. Maybe not. Actually, no, the movie is bollocks. The movie starts off with Poe and his chums fighting pissed-off space Nazis. Star Wars turns into quip wars as Poe flies around quipping obnoxiously like he's auditioning for Guardians of the Galaxy. Then all his teammates die horribly. Every frame is a clusterfuck of lasers, and I suffered a seizure. This part of the story is actually intriguing, as the rebels are trying to outrun the baddies and are low on fuel. It has a ticking clock feel to it. Oh well, time to cut to the boring part of the film, featuring Daisy Ridley and wizened Luke Skywalker on Craggy Island. We're back where Force Awakens ended, and it picks up where we left off, right after Mark Hamill turns around for a royalty check and says bugger all. Only this time, Marky Boy turns around and says,
I fundamentally disagree with virtually everything you've decided about my character.
No, he should have said that. Instead, he ditches the lightsaber and is pissy. And for a good portion of the film, it's a boring slog of back and forth between Luke and Rey. Kylo Ren is back, and with electrical tape stuck to his face, because he got beaten by a girl. That hasn't stopped him, and he's back to being an angsty emo spurred on by the death of Chester Bennington. He's trying to appease his melting sugar daddy, Snoke, who is basically the Emperor in gold, but someone left him in a microwave too long. Just like in the last film, the mysterious Big Cheese spends all his time sitting on his arse. Fuckleberry Finn is also alive and well after getting his spine fucked in the last film. He fills some of the diversity quota by befriending this charming young lady who starred in such unforgettable pinnacles of kino as this anti-smoking advert featuring outdated internet memes. Yeah, that was the face I pulled watching this crap. But Disney want to appeal to the Asian demographic, so they team up and go on a filler mission to a casino planet where they accomplish fuck all and shoehorn in some weird anti-capitalist social commentary. Bit hypocritical, don't you think, Disney? Back to the fanfiction. Luke is reluctant to train Rey, and he whines about how his super special Jedi school got destroyed by the Star Wars equivalent of Columbine. Luke eventually relents by some very contrived means. Luke meets R2-D2, who just so happens to have the decades-old recording from the first ever Star Wars film. Disney scores reference points for the fanboys, but it's very contrived, lazy writing. Luke doesn't train Rey out of guilt for letting down the rebellion, or the death of several planets, or the death of his best friend. No, he's encouraged by the memory of sweet, sweet incest. Thus begins Rey for Pay Daisy Ridley's Jedi training. Not that she needs it. She's amazing as it is. She knows how to fight already, use mind tricks, and at a push can use her overbite to open beer bottles. You can see the lazy writing creep in as Luke is essentially playing Yoda spliced with Slavoj Žižek, and part of Rey's training even has a spooky, surreal cave with visions, just like in The Empire Strikes Back. While training, Rey starts Force FaceTiming with Kylo Ren and learns that Luke and Kylo fought over which Linkin Park album is the best, Hybrid Theory or Meteora. Rey gets in a fight with Luke and leaves the island to find Kylo Ren because he's a dreamy bad boy you can fix. and the internet swelled with a million erotic fanfictions that day. The story is all over the place as writer/director Rian Johnson tries to figure out what the hell he's doing. There is no nuance with the tone and plot as it switches from quirky, quippy humor to Star Wars Dunkirk. As the film drags on, the plot holes become plot chasms, and I'm left with a load of questions. How had the Empire managed to restore themselves to full power? Why have the rebels lost nearly everything? What happened over the past 20 years? Why has everything been reset to zero? It undermines the previous movies and makes all the accomplishments moot. If the Empire is trailing and tracking the fleeing rebel ships, why not coordinate a second strike team to jump in front of the rebels and create a pincer movement? What is the point of General Hux's character other than being an ineffective bitch? What is the point of Phasma? She's just a stormtrooper in chrome, has less lines than the previous film, and is killed really quickly by Finn. Why did C-3PO have a red arm, but now he doesn't? Was that going to be a plot point? Why is R2-D2 relegated to the role of projector, while cyber-bollock BB-8 has usurped his position as the quirky comic relief droid? Is Disney so shallow they can only recycle characters and call them new? Why did Laura Dern's character not tell Poe her battle plans? He would have gone along with it instead of staging a half-assed mutiny. Why does Leia have force powers despite having no training? Why hasn't she used these powers before? Could be handy for getting more recruits or just causing chaos for the Empire. Why is Luke Skywalker completely out of character? He ponders killing his 12-year-old nephew because he thinks he might turn bad. While in the previous movies, he was all about redeeming his father, who had actually committed genocide and wanted to avoid killing him if he could. Why does the ghost of Yoda show up, and why is he a dickhead arsonist? If we're going to have Deus Ex Machina ghosts, why doesn't Obi-Wan show up, or any other dead Jedi? They could be very helpful. Why is Rey so powerful? Why is her parentage hand-waved over with crap exposition from Kylo? Why can't we see her dead Junker parents? Ever heard of Show Don't Tell, you hack? Who the fuck is Snoke? What's his background? How did he rise to power? We'll never know, as Kylo kills him off in a massive anti-climax. But the biggest question I have is why is Rian Johnson allowed to write and direct fucking movies? Back to the Rey and Kylo shipping. After killing Snoke and his Power Ranger goons, Kylo does his version of the Darth Vader rule the galaxy speech with 120% more nihilism. Rey declines and fucks off to play with the Millennium Falcon. Everything culminates in a large final showdown between the Rebels and the First Order. The space battles become ground battles as we switch to a Rebel base getting assaulted by giant metal robo-dogs, just like in The Empire Strikes Back. But this isn't a snow planet. It's a salt planet with crystals, so there was a tiny flicker of inspiration from Ryan's only brain cell. Carrie Fisher is on the Rebel base, having mistaken the planet's salt for cocaine, so now the stakes are high. Luckily, the Millennium Falcon flies through crystal formations while getting shot at by TIE fighters, which would have been thrilling had I not seen this set piece in The Force Awakens. Replace crystals with broken ships. So not only are Disney ripping off Empire Strikes Back, but they're reusing stuff from their own films. Talk about fucking lazy. Speaking of which, the fight is going south, but Luke becomes a Deus Ex Machina ghost that projects himself to the salty planet to have a showdown with Kylo. The fight is bizarre, as Luke dances about and is invulnerable because he's a not-quite hologram thing. I wish I was making this shit up. It's all a distraction, and the last of the remaining rebels fit on the Millennium Falcon and fly off into the unknown. And after the fight, Luke fades away like a hot fart. That's it. The end. Yes. Spoiler alert. No, shit. The Last Jedi is a mediocre movie that is essentially a glorified 2.5-hour-long toy commercial, just in time for Christmas, especially for these fucking space penguins. They're called Porgs, and Disney are desperately trying to make them a thing. It's working too, as geek culture aficionados are all over this shit because they have more money than sense and are on a dangerously high intake of soy and avocados. The film had cool special effects, certainly, but that doesn't mean shit if it's let down in other departments, like acting. The acting in this is just awful, especially Daisy Ridley. I'm not surprised, considering her audition tape was just her crying. Sure, it gave the casting director an erection, but it also means we're stuck with a bint who has no range whatsoever, unless they need her to cry. The film franchise is hindered because it all hinges on Daisy Ridley's character, and it doesn't help that Kathleen Kennedy has a feminist agenda. The Force is female, apparently, rather than an inclusive concept for everyone. Corporate feminism is at the core of these new Star Wars films, and these so-called strong, independent women are a facade used for marketing based on identity politics. But Kathleen Kennedy has a hard clit for female empowerment, which is all well and good if you can actually write a decent female lead. One of the fundamentals of storytelling is the hero's journey, where your protagonist is utter crap but called to action, and after some trials and tribulations, they become the hero the world needs. Original Star Wars followed this very well. Take Luke Skywalker. He's poor, lives on a shit rock with his aunt and uncle drinking blue milk all day. He longs for something better. Then he is called to adventure. Is he a hero yet? Nope. Gets beaten up by Muslims. What? Sorry, sand people. But what's the difference? Even after that, he still isn't capable and can't stop his guardians from getting barbecued. He gets ripped on for being young and stupid. An old fart has to save his candy ass a few times. He almost gets mushed in a trash compactor, and it's clear that this space twink is in way over his head. But it is only near the end when he gets his heroic moment. He takes an impossible shot and wins the Super Bowl. Or whatever. It's satisfying because he finally proves himself. Even then, he still isn't that great. In the next film, he has to get trained by a snotball, and his arrogance pits him against an even better trained nemesis. For his naivety, he loses a hand. He's still shit, but we root for him. We've followed his tough journey this far, and by the third film, we see him become the savior of the galaxy after some horrendous shit happens to him. Very satisfying. Now let's look at Rey. We are introduced to her as she skillfully abseils into a derelict. She lives alone on a desert junk planet with no parents. She doesn't need them anyway. She supports herself independently. She's a great mechanic, speaks droid fluently. Don't need no man to help her. She can take on multiple enemies. She longs to escape the planet, and does so by stealing the most iconic and best-loved ship in Star Wars. She can impress the heroic smuggler Han Solo within 5 minutes. Finn clearly likes her too, and all the rebels. Princess Leia is instant besties with her. She can handle herself against tentacle monsters, then stormtroopers. Gets captured, but quickly masters her force powers without training. She's clearly a Jedi, by the way. Escapes with no one's help, defeats a well-trained Sith apprentice unscathed, and the rebellion loves her so much she gets the Forgotten Map and a free spaceship so she can show off to Luke Skywalker how awesome she is. And Episode 8 is all about how great she is too. Her characterization is that she is capable and badass from the start. No character progression, no flaws, simply amazing, simply boring. Where's the jeopardy? Where's the adversity? Feels like Rey just gets a pass on everything. As it stands, Finn is the only character I like because he follows the hero's journey better. But Disney are so crap at writing, they have two heroes doing their own thing, and so it's all a bit disjointed. Coupled with Daisy's bad acting, our heroine is boring and not compelling enough to carry this trilogy. The franchise is further held back because Kathleen Kennedy and her ilk don't know what the fuck they're doing with it. The Disney suits have no creativity, just market research, and Kathleen Kennedy is such a control freak, she's calling all the shots. First red flag that popped up when Disney acquired the sci-fi cash cow was when they decreed that the expanded universe wasn't canon, and only Disney-approved stories and properties were part of their Star Wars. For those of you with a life outside of the internet, the expanded universe was, well, exactly that. It was works of fiction that expanded on the Star Wars universe. Okay, it was a mixed bag with weird contrived fan fiction like Han Solo's estranged black wife or clones of Luke Skywalker called Luke and Luke. But there were interesting concepts, stories, and some good video games. It showed that the Star Wars universe had a lot of scope and you could be very creative with it. There was tons of material that Disney could have adapted into films if they wanted to take some risks. But no, Disney calls the shots and they wanted full control. These petty controlling tendencies would spill over into the film world. Rogue One was the first casualty, as Disney quickly realized that a risky standalone movie that was more harrowing war film than fantasy sci-fi might be a hard sell. They brought in Tony Gilroy as an extra director and screenwriter, so they quickly did reshoots and re-edits mere months away from the theatrical release to try and make it slightly more palatable. This was the start of a new and insidious trend for Disney. Episode 9 was not spared this treatment. From the get-go, there were signs that production wasn't going smoothly, and this was compounded when Kathleen Kennedy announced that director Colin Trevorrow was being dropped from the film, and cited the reason as creative differences. Make note of that phrase. A new and more malleable director was brought on board, J.J. Abrams to be precise. Good old nepotism. This type of thing would happen again with the upcoming Han Solo standalone film, which has had horrendous production issues. The two directors initially brought on board were fired, reason being, and you've guessed it, creative differences. Ron Howard was brought in, nearly all of the film completely reshot, resulting in an increased budget. Acting coaches were also called in, as the male lead is made of cardboard, and I guess no one saw Emilia Clarke's Oscar-winning performance in Terminator Genesis. Ugh. So who's really in charge? Why bother bringing in directors at all if you won't give them an inch of freedom? Why is Disney's creativity better than an outsider's? The fundamental problem with Disney's creativity is it's severely lacking, and this affects all aspects of filmmaking. Disney is risk-averse. Everything is played safe and meant to appeal to the broadest possible audience. We see the same ships, set pieces, and characters with only slight deviations to give them a semblance of something different, but ultimately familiar and uninspired. It gives Disney the excuse to sell us the same Millennium Falcon and Darth Vader shit every year. It's okay to be creatively bankrupt, just not actually bankrupt. Let's play a little game. I want you to hum an iconic Star Wars song. Got one? Here's a few little ditties to get you all nostalgic. And here's one from the crap prequels. Even that stands out. Now, hum a song from the new Star Wars films. Yeah, it's not that memorable. I owe John Williams a fuck ton of money now. And that's the problem. Everything is a homage or a derivative of the original trilogy. The original Star Wars films had a huge cultural impact, and it's very hard to replicate that. Same with a lot of reboots of classic films. Try as you might, it's hard to recapture that special something the original films had. They may make money, but these new films can't really stand out on their own because they're referencing something that has been done already. I know this is a kid's film, it's not meant to be high art, of course not, but that doesn't mean it can't have a soul. I worry what the future filmmakers will produce, having grown up with a plethora of cookie-cutter movies with lazy writing and one-dimensional characters. I worry that, culturally, we're stagnating, only able to produce sequels and rehashes of classic films of yesteryear. My biggest worry is Disney. They are a corporation that are acquiring more studios, more intellectual properties, and they are forcing directors to be slaves rather than auteurs. Perhaps the Disney bubble will burst. Doubt it, as brand loyalty is ever growing. Well, at least we have these cute little porgs, am I right? Honestly, I don't get your appeal. Now, witness the true power of the cynical side. Neat.
Worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression.